Good afternoon, buon pomeriggio, benvenute e benvenuti. Welcome to Memoria Presente, a workshop for educators, guidance counselors, and student teachers about the common Spanish legacy in Italian and Latin American cultures. My name is Teresa Fiore, and I'm the Inserra Chair in Italian and Italian American Studies at Montclair State University, a position linked to an endowment generously supported by Mr. Inserra and his family, who since 2011, indeed 2021, marks the 10th anniversary of the launching of the endowed chair, have made possible a regular calendar of events. All these events have been part of a transnational vision, embracing multiple languages, like Italian, Spanish, and English today, have been transdisciplinary in nature, and have been characterized by collaborations among programs, departments, centers, or units on campus. This time we're partnering up with two interesting units on campus. So in a moment, I will give the microphone to Marilyn Davis, and I will introduce her. My presentation will follow to tell you more specifically about the NEH project, which is at the core of today's event. And then the idea is to talk among ourselves. So we'll have breakout rooms. And finally, we'll hear from one of our students, Ashley Espinoza, who graduated from the Italian program and is now teaching both Italian and Spanish in a New Jersey high school. I think after thanking Lydia Rosenberg for her support, including at a time of little emergencies like today, I would like to introduce in the next slide the people we're collaborating with. This event is part of a new series called Dentro Afuera, the interconnections between Italian and Latin American Spanish cultures. We presented film screenings already in the past, cooking lessons, and we've already collaborated on that occasion with the Hispanic Serving Initiatives Office on campus. This is an office that was created after our university became a Hispanic serving institution. For those of you who are not familiar with that term, this is a federal designation given to universities that have more than 25% of Latin students. Of course, it's based on an application. It's not an automatic recognition. And I have had the pleasure of working with Katia Goldfarb that leads that office as Associate Provost for Hispanic Initiatives, who was not able to join us today. This time, we are also partnering up with the Montclair State University Network for Educational Renewal, linked to our Center of Pedagogy. And we have Marilyn Davis, the director, with us now, who can tell you a bit more about this network and how we're working together on this occasion.
Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this initiative. I've been working with Dr. Fiore for 3 years now on elaboration of the languages, Italian specifically, into our high schools and getting our high school students to participate. Before I begin, I'd like to talk about the Network for Educational Renewal. We are a partnership with 34 school districts throughout northern New Jersey. These are school districts where they see the importance of professional development for their teachers, and also a collaboration between colleges of education, colleges of arts and sciences, the languages, to make connections and linkages that go beyond just our higher education institutions. How do we collaborate with our schools and our school districts to bring these wonderful opportunities to children early before they decide on their career. So we've been working to recruit high school students to come on over to Montclair State University and work with Dr. Fiore and her team on such initiatives as the one that you'll be talking about today. This initiative is to promote Italian language at the high school level and to create increased collaboration between Italian speakers and Spanish speakers. The Latinx student population in schools will only increase during the 21st century, and being trans language and transcultural is important, and it's an important opportunity to bring to our students. This workshop aims at creating a network of educators, guidance counselors, and student teachers interested in transnational approaches to language and culture. When I was asked to participate, I immediately sent this announcement out to all 34 counselors, school counselors. I sent it out to superintendents and to administrators who are responsible for disseminating information throughout our 34 school districts. We look forward to continued participation. Dr. Fiore is relentless in this initiative, and her intent to have more Italian and Spanish speakers interact, collaborate, and be cross-prepared in both languages. So I welcome this opportunity to participate. Our Center of Pedagogy is located in the College of Education, the ideal place for disseminating such information. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marilyn. We've had the opportunity to work together also on another project which brings high school students on our campus every summer for an intensive program for 3 weeks that offers college credit. And our intention is actually to involve more Hispanic students for the summer program in the future. Next slide, please. So as I was telling you, today we're focusing on a project that came out of the course Italian for Spanish speakers, and that is entitled Memoria presente, 2 words that actually work exactly the same way, both in Italian and in Spanish, and that in a way are able to really capture what is being done with this project. That is to say, digging into history and understanding the impact and ramifications of that history on the present, while creating a new map, a new geography to understand those connections. I'm going to start with an anecdote. A few years ago, I taught an undergraduate course on immigration in Italy, contemporary immigration. And at the end of it, a student from Peru, originally from Peru, obviously living in the United States, approached me saying that she was about to leave for the Christmas break to go and visit her family in Italy. So I was a bit surprised because usually these are trips for fun, for exploration, but the trips to Italy that are linked to family are the more common ones right around among our students of Italian origins. There are many Italian American students in New Jersey. So I was a little bit confused. There was a bit of a geographical short circuit in my head. And I asked her, and she told me that part of her family from Peru had gone to the United States, and part of it had gone as part of these migratory trajectories to Milan. And so all of a sudden, I realized that was a really fascinating triangulation that over time, I decided to further explore, and making the subject actually the heart of what I will be telling you about today. Next slide. So if you press the button twice, Lydia, these 2 covers, the cover of a book of mine, Preoccupied Spaces, in which I look at Italian immigration, colonialism, and immigration into Italy today, precisely to create transnational connections outside of Italy, but with an immediate impact on Italy, providing a new lens altogether to read Italy. You can see this as the background, the infrastructure of my work, to which I've added the map that you're going to see in a moment, which is that of the Spanish Empire. So as I was considering all these forms of mobility, primarily after the unification, I realized that it was possible to actually consider forms of mobility that predated it. With the Spanish Empire, one of the two largest in the history of colonialism and imperialism, we have a manifestation of early forms of globalization and modernity, touching on economy, religion, military, of course, involving the mobility of forced mobility of slaves. And interestingly, the Spanish Empire included also Italy, parts of Italy, especially the south, but also parts of northern Italy, certainly Sardinia, and connected in interesting ways Italy also to Latin America. But over time, this connection has been reinforced by historical emigration to South America, primarily the early flows starting towards the end of the 1800s, right after Italy became unified. That set up the first sort of transnational routes in the more contemporary, recent period, having to do with human flows and circulation of both ideas and products. And then, of course, the next aspect is that now there are flows of immigrants coming from Latin America, going to Italy. This is in roughly the past 50 years, defining other transnational routes, sometimes overlapping with the previous ones, and prompting a similar circulation of ideas of people and products, but of course with a different reliance on technology and easy transportation. So once this map started being so stratified and having so many ramifications, I decided to bring it together in a course called Italian for Spanish Speakers, targeted for our Latin students, but not only, because I've had students who are Spanish majors and don't necessarily have a Latin American background. I modeled it after Cal State Long Beach courses. I used to teach there and was part of the seminal work done around teaching Italian for Spanish speakers. And there, that project flew, especially under the leadership of Clorinda Donato, ended up in being supported by a major NEH grant and was multi-language in nature, and produced actually textbooks that are very important for these new enterprise that many of us are involved in. I decided to go for an accelerated course in which students covered 2 semesters in one, the very first semester. And of course, I reach out to them by emphasizing their knowledge of Spanish, which makes them more equipped to study Italian. I emphasize the fact that they can become trilingual now that they're already bilingual. And because we have a language requirement on campus, I remind them that this is the first part of a 2-part language requirement for a total of 6 credits. And of course, it's important that they're informed about the fact that from the very beginning, we are looking at culture, cultural commonalities between all these different worlds and not just at the language affinities. So the emphasis on fast tracking, students can go from 111, this course, directly to the second year, which is intermediate. And of course, I tell them that the class is by definition a place where we translanguage, where we speak Italian and Spanish, and sometimes rely on English. So moving away from the idea of the classroom as a full immersion space, which is the one that many of us were trained in and that we're trying to debunk as part of this approach. Next slide. So indeed, we can have, Lydia, all the points here on the slide. In the classroom, we leverage this bilingualism precisely because we tell the students that they can achieve a lot in a shorter period of time, but we also remind them of their plurilingual cultural competence as a key component. That is to say, from the very outset, we tell them that there are shared practices, experiences, lived environments. I'm thinking of neighborhoods here, for example, or objects that play out on the both imperial and migratory map that I shared with you. And this happens from the very beginning. Here again, there's a debunking of the traditional idea that they need to know more language before they can actually embrace culture. And in particular, complex ideas having to do, for example, with history, right, with society, with the Spanish speakers. Actually, that is possible from the very beginning. These translanguages and transculturing has an impact on our campuses beyond the classroom, because classes such as this one empower languages in general. They empower students through languages. We are able to attract more students who are so well versed in the language in a short period of time towards upper division classes, towards a minor, and those who are particularly invested in Italian studies may think about a double major. If we translate that into the high school environment, this means that we can quickly bring students to an Italian 4, an Italian honor, for example, or indeed the AP. We empower students, and I'm going back to Marilyn's comments at the beginning of this workshop, students who are more and more numerous on our campuses. In a matter of a few years, Montclair State University has gone from having 25% to having 30%, and the incoming class went up to roughly 35%. So we're not talking about a minority, obviously, on campus. And this group is not automatically seen as a driver for academic activities, nor the targeted audience for new learning opportunities. And that's exactly what I've been wanting to reverse as an approach in these classes. The Latino students are the ones somewhat governing our rethinking of the curriculum. And of course, this empowers the university at large and its graduates, because it gives them the opportunity to really understand what an international curriculum is. Very often we hear about the need to internationalize the curriculum, and this is exactly what courses such as these ones can do, especially, and I would like to perhaps address this during the Q&A, if we develop a series of courses that can then be grouped under a badge or a certificate. So to go back to the classroom now, the language affinities between Italian and Spanish obviously have been explored by all the classes that have been taught in Italian for Spanish speakers. But quite often, at least up until a few years ago, I'm curious to hear from the participants today if this has changed. There was the sense that the same book would be kept and that the emphasis would be on similarities and affinities of the two languages. Those are very easy, and they're the ones that empower students from the very first week of classes. I just chose a few there. Parole come libro, laboratorio, lentamente, lago, son exactamente, ¿no? Se ven exactamente y suenan exactamente como las palabras en español, libro, laboratorio, lentamente, lago. By the same token, we know that addressing the structure of mi piace, mi piacciono is very easy with Spanish speakers because they use me gusta, me gustan, the impersonal structure, very different from what we would be doing with an Anglophone audience. But beyond these set of language affinities, I was very interested in the cultural commonalities. So now in this slide, I'm going to quickly show you a series of images that have been really the fabric of my course by reminding students in specific units that I've built about La Semana Santa, for example, so religious aspects that are still very much part of different societies from Salamanca to Trapani in Sicily, all the way to El Salvador. The same for architecture, the Baroque style that makes a certain churches look exactly the same, right? Whether they're in Mexico City or in Modica or Noto in Sicily. And when we look at food, which is always one of the students' favorites, of course, we have fascinating examples of recipes that have traveled from Galicia, as in the case of the empanadillas called panatigi in Sicily, that of course are commonplace all over Latin America. In this case, they're sweet in particular. And then, of course, examples with art pieces, such as the marvelous frescoes of Tiepolo in Madrid, representing, among many other aspects of the royal history, the Spanish Empire. So single units can be developed specifically around these themes. But I don't stay away from popular culture, and you can quickly recognize here Laura Pausini, interestingly, a Latin Emmy Award winner, reminding us of how Italian artists have become a part of the fabric of pop culture in Latin America to the point of being seen as Latin American themselves almost. And then with a reversed trajectory, Maradona, El Pibe Napoletano, coming from Argentina, but being embraced as a Neapolitan. And then Rafael Lacarra, an idol in Latin America, which deserves a whole, I think, a workshop in itself. But I thought it would be important to include her, especially since she passed recently. And her connection to Latin America has resurfaced in very interesting ways. And then on top, we can show them all at once. Lydia, of course, images that remind us of the migration I told you about, Italianos en Argentina. Of course, Plaza Italia can be found in many major cities around Latin America. But by the same token, of course, Peruvians, right, with their traditions are part of the landscape of Milan. And to move into the area of Made in Italy, we also consider as part of this class, this introductory beginning class, accelerated, Dolce & Gabbana and their Spanish collection that links Spain and Sicily, and the work of Renzo piano in Santander, in Spain, where very interesting connections are made in terms of Mediterranean light in places where he decided to develop his projects, his architectural projects. So what this course does effectively is to create a fruitful tension between the encounter with an unfamiliar culture, right? For the longest time, we were called foreign languages, foreign cultures. And the idea here is to remind students of the fact that they have actually already an advanced level of familiarity with this world that they are meeting for the first time, for example, in many cases. And because of the historical legacies and the passing of traditions along the transnational routes that I've described, they're not foreigners to it. All the contrary, and as this mantra that I use with them, going abroad can also mean finding home. And in the classroom, we do it in person, but when this class was taught for a year or so, roughly, we were in a virtual mode, and that type of traveling abroad, of course, meant for them finding home in many ways. So this experience, after roughly 3 semesters, brought me to the decision to actually apply for a grant, mostly to formalize some of the work that I had done, and to also share it, and to create a network of people interested in it. So 3 goals here around the project. The first one is to create a repository of cultural resources. Some of them I just illustrated to you in the previous slides. Some of them are being incorporated. Some others will come soon. And the idea is that they're going to be open access pretty soon. The second goal, which is still in progress, is the interview with some students. Actually, 2 of them are here with us today, who have multiple backgrounds. That is to say, they're from Latin America and they live in the United States, but family-wise, they're also connected to Italy in different ways. So I was very intrigued by their stories, and I wanted to somewhat document them so that we can speak to the students through the students' experience directly. And the third one is the one that I hope we can achieve today and right after today, with the creation of a slightly more formalized network of educators and hopefully counselors as we continue to talk about this approach. So the current resources that are available online, yesterday I sent everybody a message with the password that you can see here, NEH 2021 Fiore. Once you enter that page, the tiny URL is reproduced here. Now the slide will show you one after the other the sections that have already been developed. The first one has to do with plants. I thought that it would be very interesting for students to actually see what kind of plants are circulated out of Latin America into Europe and vice versa, as part of the Spanish Empire commercial routes. And that section also includes some preliminary activities for different levels that I would like to actually get feedback on. That's more of a trial. The other pages are still in progress. They do not include activities yet, and they certainly will expand in terms of what they include. There's one on gastronomy and cuisine. There's one about literature and film. Given the amount of material that I'm assembling, probably these 2 will be split eventually. The one on art and architecture is not available yet, nor is the one on music. And I'm also developing a bibliography along with it, which is annotated so that users can actually get a sense of what the material is about at a glance. And then they can actually go to the specific pages to learn more and more in depth about these resources. So this is how, at the moment, the project looks in terms of its digital repository of materials. And when I said that more is coming soon, I was thinking about some classics, such as I Promessi Sposi by Alessandro Manzoni, Los Novios en Español, because obviously we don't necessarily think about the Spanish background to it, but it will be interesting to read the book through that specific lens. And then another beautiful book called Ore di Spagna, in which a Sicilian writer, Leonardo Sciascia, travels through Spain precisely to understand Sicily better. And does so with the photographer Ferdinando Scianna, producing beautiful essays that are very philosophical in nature, and offer the students the possibility of seeing the reversal in action. That is to say, understanding your place through another vision, and constantly inverting those lenses. Because of the similarities that we have addressed so far. The recent development that I wanted to share with you is that people are writing to me, telling me about what they're doing. And I'm more than happy to include, obviously, what they're sharing. I'm thinking of a video on Italian priests active in Bolivia by Elena Bellina, and the study on the colonial ideology of Italian immigrants in Argentina who embraced a project of erasure of indigenous people precisely to become white, to become more Argentinian. And this is by Tullio Pagano. So I'm excited and invigorated by the conversations that the project is already prompting, and I look forward to more in the future. In this last part, I wanted to share with you a bit of an implementation of what I've been talking about inside the classroom. And I will do so by also opening up the possibility of using a tool that maybe some of you are familiar with, called Coil, which stands for Collaborative Online International Learning. It was launched by SUNY, but it can be adopted on any campus. And it's basically an opportunity to set up a partnership with a class abroad, a partnership, a collaboration with another teacher and another group of students in order to develop a specific project. Coil can be for an entire course, can be for just a unit. That was the case for my experiment last semester, which I had the pleasure of developing with my colleague in Palermo, Floriana Di Gesù. So it's been a partnership between the two universities. What we did together was precisely to include a unit in a long unit, I would say, because it lasted for 8 weeks with both Zoom meetings live and asynchronous work. And we obviously highlighted that as part of the promotion of the course last semester. What was it about? It was about Aztec chocolate in Sicily and Mexico. We decided to choose food to reach the students a little bit more directly. And we did so with a fascinating story of food circulation and food preservation and active maintenance. The Aztec chocolate is a type of chocolate that indeed the Spaniards learned about when they arrived in Mexico, and they eventually took it back to Europe. And it was introduced in Sicily in the 1700s mostly used by the aristocracy as a hot beverage, but it stayed over the years as a production of chocolate bars that are very unique. They do not contain any added fat. And because the chocolate is melted at a very low temperature, the added sugar remains in the grainy texture. So it's a pretty unique type of chocolate. And the fascinating aspect of it is that it's still produced in the same way in Mexico, in particular in Oaxaca. And it's also produced in Spain and parts of France. So the transnational quality of it was absolutely exciting for all of us. The students joined in with great enthusiasm, and we asked them to use both Italian and English as part of their conversations and as part of these projects to analyze these cultural affinities. Students in Palermo are students of Italian learning Spanish, while my students are English-speaking and Spanish-speaking students in the US learning Italian. And what we did, we decided to have a cooking lesson for them about the preparation of this chocolate. We premised that with a really interesting introduction about the history and the technology of that production with a chocolatier based in Modica. And then we had a chef, Annalisa Pompeo, prepare the chocolate bars live in front of us. The event ended up in being a public one. And because of Zoom, it allowed us to have interpreters based in Spain, interpreting into Spanish, while 2 Italian interpreters based in New York were doing the interpretation into Italian. So the event itself reminded the students of the possibilities open to them as they progress in their language learning. And this is the group of students, unfortunately not all of them, who participated with myself and Floriana Di Gesù as the instructors, and also a TA from Rutgers University to create collaborations among different universities. The concrete goal of this project was the production of collaborative videos that had to have a voiceover in both Italian and Spanish, and then subtitles, of course, in the opposite language. So students learned how to create subtitles, and of course, they had to film themselves, so they had to edit, and they had to develop a script. But they had to be creative. That is to say, they had to add something to the recipe that made their chocolate bars unique. And I wanted to quickly share 2 of them. One was bitter chocolate with sea salt, and the salt in that case was the tangible reminder of how this chocolate has traveled across oceans, almost as a means of transportation for the chocolate to travel between Latin America and Europe. And then at the same time, they added a meaning related to the pandemic and the period in which we were locked down at home, and the chocolate was supposed, of course, to bring energy with its richness, pleasure with its sugar, and the sea salt being the kick that everybody needed in those days, and we still need today. The second video was very interesting. The students created a chocolate sphere which represents the earth, and inside there was a delicious filling that represented the beauty of nature, but at the same time there was this dark sauce all over as an ominous reminder of the pollution that is destroying the beautiful planet. So this was for the actual implementation of a unit based on this approach, the transnational, transcultural translingual, as I said before, but also translational approach. Here, I'm profoundly inspired by the incredibly important work done by colleagues in the UK, Charles Burdett, Loredana Polezzi, Derek Duncan, and Jennifer Burns, whom we've had the pleasure of having for an event last year to present the transnational modern languages series at Liverpool University Press, and also the various grants that they received for projects that placed Italy at the forefront of a rethinking of Italian studies in a transnational direction. As the next slide shows you, the tenets remain, of course, those of developing multiple languages and multiple competencies, breaking the mold of one nation and one language, which I'm very pleased to inform those of you who may not know is actually the main theme of the Modern Language Association for 2022, where the idea is to certainly challenge also the division of languages within the very departments that contain them. Often within the languages department, there is really a collaboration that is interlinguistic, and we end up in being a mosaic of independent languages. And of course, with this approach, the idea is to overcome institutional barriers and pedagogical orthodoxies and preconceptions, precisely to have innovative approaches that are necessary to face the decrease in enrollment on all our campuses. The goal being that of motivating students from different perspectives and highlighting the achievements that they can enjoy. The broader effects then is that of learning as practitioners in Italian studies to embrace the productive tension between the national and the transnational. Charles Burdett talks about the inseparability of the two, given that we're talking to students whose life trajectories are very often already integrating the national and the transnational. And of course, the idea is to create synergies, as I was suggesting a moment ago, across languages, but also across colleges, right? In order to have students combine majors rather than thinking of monothematic trajectories and not international trajectories while they stay on our campuses. And of course, this is absolutely important also for their opportunities in the job markets, where obviously complexity in terms of skills, competencies, abilities, backgrounds that are both technical, scientific, and humanistic are absolutely necessary in our complex professions today. Indeed, as part of the Aztec chocolate unit, what we discovered, including in conversation with the chocolatier, what happens is that the moment you look at these foods as the result of circulation, of cross-pollinations, of meetings, the very idea of the made in Italy is being challenged, if not debunked. And anecdotally, that chocolatier has decided not to actually recognize his own chocolate with the label of, authentic local product, which one can actually apply for in Italy and have official recognition from the local authorities and national authorities, because he believed that the chocolate of Modica is Aztec, is Spanish, is French, and is also Sicilian. And I think that allows us to embrace the teaching of business Italian, the teaching of made in Italy in a much more interesting way, so that we avoid the risk of becoming a little bit of a branch of the Italian trade agency, and we still remain the critical readers and the interpreters of cultures that we're called to be as professors in Italian studies programs or transnational Italian studies programs. Now, unfortunately, Italian 111 has been currently suspended due to very low enrollment. A variety of issues, in part having to do with COVID, but also the ways in which we are redesigning as institutions the paths of our students. Has halted this project on its teaching side, but it continues on the research side. The Coil project attached to it has been suspended as a result. It was supposed to be about Baroque architecture, which we have on our own campus, even though it's in New Jersey. It's actually characterized by Isabelline architecture, the same that you can find in the southwest of the United States, in places such as San Diego State University. Of course, because we have 30% of Latinx population, the idea is to continue to advertise it. Since we have a language requirement in place, we want to actually create more curriculum. And as the last point shows, I'm trying to turn this challenge into a new vision where I'm hoping to have not only Italian for Spanish speakers as a general course, but actually capstone courses, study abroad, targeted, designed around this approach, and even internships. And here I get to you, in the sense that after this more formal presentation, I would like, first of all, to run a poll. Hopefully it will work. I was curious to know if you are a high school teacher, college professor, college adjunct lecturer, high school counselor, college administrator, student teacher in training, or just a student joining out of curiosity. You can do this with a simple click. There's also a second question having to do a little bit more with your location and if you're actively teaching a course of this nature. Indeed, one of the goals of today's event is that of creating una rete, una sorta di Plaza Italia in cui spagnolo e italiano si incontrano e viaggiano insieme. In questo senso vorrei fare un sondaggio nei prossimi giorni attraverso una Google Form per definire appunto esigenze e desideri. Es la creación de una red en la cual el italiano y el español puedan encontrarse y viajar juntos, un poquito como el tren de la metropolitana del metro de Buenos Aires que se va a Plaza Italia, a través de una encuesta también en los próximos días con un formulario de Google Form para definir lo que queremos, lo que necesitamos. It's a network about desires and needs, but obviously also about proposals. I would like to hear from all of you. So the next slide talks about what we can discuss in the breakout rooms that we are going to create. There's 50 of us, so perhaps we can have 10 of them, of roughly 5 people, so that the conversation is easier. And the idea is that of giving you roughly 15 minutes, but we will reach out to you when it's time to come back together. And you will have one person speaking for the group and sort of summarizing the relevant points. Some possible topics are the ones included in the webpage for this event. In particular, I'm interested in the idea of a study abroad program that leverages this experience and has a specific formats for students with a Spanish language background. I'm also interested in how you are promoting these classes. What do we need to have in place institutionally in order to have a real impact on the students? Many of you may be familiar with the seal of biliteracy. And there may be other active feeding mechanisms that you want to share. In general, I'm also interested in ways in which we can create forms of support for students, such as scholarships or paid internships. So any activity that you have in place or that you're working on, would be happy to hear about. So thank you for listening so far, and please join the breakout room. Please share your thoughts, and we'll see you in roughly 15 minutes. And if you're done, please let us know and we can reconvene a little bit earlier. Thank you. Buena conversazione. Que disfruten la conversación. I think everybody's back at this point. So I'll let Ashley Espinoza now speak for a few minutes. I thought it was a beautiful opportunity to actually embrace one of our former students in the Italian program, who is an Italian a certified teacher and teaches now Italian and Spanish at a high school in New Jersey, a private one. But she's not the only one. Recently, we've seen several announcements over the years, I would say, for teachers who can actually teach both languages. Now, the question is, are they teaching them in a combined form, or do they remain part of national visions? And Ashley has a very interesting personal story as well. I don't know if she feels like sharing bits and pieces of that. Thank you for joining us, Ashley.
Thank you. I just want to make sure all of you are able to hear me correct. Okay. Yes, today I just want to talk about my experience with both Italian and Spanish language. My parents are Peruvian. I was also born in Peru. However, when I was 6 years old, I moved to Italy. Something weird happened at the moment. When I moved to Italy, I stopped speaking Spanish, even though that was my first language. And it was because of my father. He felt that this was the best way to learn Italian and not have Spanish accent. Then when I was 8 years old, around that age, I decided that learning my native language, which was basically my family language, the Spanish, was very important to me. And I started to, little by little, try to learn every day different words. My parents are from Peru, and I am from Peru. There are different dialects also in Peru. So it was just very complicated. My grandma was from La Sierra, which is a different part of Peru. They spoke Quechua, and it's basically not exactly Spanish, but it's similar to it, even though it has a different language. It was very hard to communicate with my grandma. It was mostly like with signals for at least for as long as I can remember. I kind of understood what she was trying to say to me when she was trying to talk to me, and but it was very hard and complicated. There was a time where I was very frustrated, and I just couldn't understand it. Then I came to the United States after growing up and having my life in Italy. I came to the United States. I did my high school here. I went to MSU. I joined the Italian and the Spanish program. Then once I graduated, which I'm also currently teaching at a high school, I saw that I always noticed this. There are these similarities between these two languages. When people say that Spanish and Italian are the same, I say that they are not the same. It's just yes, we have the culture, we have sports, we have food, like we were talking before in the breakout room. It's very interesting how everything is connected, but they are not the same. However, it was very helpful for me to know Spanish and Italian, even when I was applying for to be like for a job to teach in a high school. I can tell you that right now at the moment, I see how I'm just very happy about how many students, how many Hispanic students are trying to learn Italian and not just continue with Spanish, which they might not already. I have a few students on my high school right now, and when I teach to them, I don't really have a specific section for them. It's just all of them together. But when I see them, I always tell them, don't take for granted that you know Spanish and you don't have to study Italian. If anything, take that as a motivation to learn a new language. And that's basically my point of view based on my own personal experience. I'm in love with both languages. If they ask me, which language do you prefer? I can't say which one I prefer. I love both of them. I grew up with both of them. And I am thankful to know both languages. Just a quick something that happened when I was little, if I could share it right now. When talking about food, I love pasta, and my family used to always cook pasta every day. It was very hard during that time to make Peruvian dishes because of the ingredients. So for me, once I came here and my mom used to cook almost every day a Peruvian dish, a different Peruvian dish, I wasn't used to eat it. Like Peruvians have a lot of rice and potato in their foods, and it was just very hard for me to accommodate and eat that every day out of nowhere. So I had to make an agreement with my mom, and we agreed that at least twice a week she cooks pasta, different kinds of pasta, but that's our agreement for now. That's basically it. I'm not sure.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you. Thank you so much for your story and for your experience. Ashley is not teaching Italian for Spanish speakers, but as you can see, she is addressing Hispanic students in her Italian classes. And so things are changing around us. And as we approach the ending, I would like to also thank Marilyn Davis for her remarks about the need to indeed involve the high schools in this endeavor, and all of you for your participation and active contribution during the breakout rooms. By the way, the main points of the discussion will become part of the agenda of future communications through the network that this meeting has allowed us to create, and a Google form that will follow will collect information about all of you to further formalize this network. Before closing, I would like to invite you to the next event. We're very pleased to have Emma Dante, award-winning theater, opera, film director, for a conversation about her recent film, The Macaluso Sisters, which is adapted from a play by the same title that was presented as a US premiere here on campus at the Casa Theater as part of Peak Performances. The film will be screened online November 6th through the 15th on the Accademia del Cinema Italiano Premi David Di Donatello, with which we have had the pleasure and honor to collaborate last year. On November 14th, the online conversation with Emma Dante will take place, and they will also include her co-producer Marika Stocchi for an exchange about the film, but also more in general about Italian cinema through a female lens. Thank you again to all of you. Grazie a tutte e a tutti, e alla prossima, until the next one. Bye bye. Arrivederci.